The night my company lost $4.8 billion across the European continent began not with a market collapse, but with a single chair being pulled away from a dining table in Midtown Manhattan. The grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel glowed under crystal chandeliers, casting golden light across hundreds of guests. Wall Street investment bankers, European manufacturing tycoons, American logistics titans, and private equity leaders filled the room, discussing supply chain corridors and industrial expansion connecting North America to Central Europe. The annual European Industrial Gala was designed to showcase major corporate alliances, but one single partnership overshadowed every other deal in the room. Somewhere inside that ballroom sat the key figure controlling a $4.8 billion logistics contract. Otto Richter, chairman of Richter Industrial Group, governed one of the most powerful manufacturing conglomerates in Germany. Otto held deep contempt for flashy slide decks, hollow corporate buzzwords, and slick elevator pitches delivered by ambitious mid-level executives. He judged men by personal integrity, technical depth, and proven consistency over decades of real-world performance. My name is Grant Vance. At 54 years old, I had spent nearly 25 years navigating transatlantic industrial logistics. Unlike young corporate executives who spent their careers behind modeling software in Manhattan skyscrapers, I built my reputation on the ground. I spent freezing winter mornings inspecting freight terminals in Bavaria, late nights coordinating machinery transit outside Frankfurt, and quiet dinners in German taverns where family-owned manufacturing leaders forged multi-generational partnerships over handshakes rather than formal legal filings. For 18 years, Otto Richter and I built Vanguard Global Logistics' European division from scratch. We conducted quarterly operational reviews, organized joint plant inspections, and secured personal commitments long before attorneys drafted paperwork. That was how multi-billion-dollar business operated in the German manufacturing ecosystem. Reputation was not an abstract marketing concept. It was the sole currency that mattered. When I stepped into the VIP dining section, the embossed place card sitting directly in front of the center leather armchair read Grant Vance. I sat down calmly, adjusted my charcoal suit jacket, and poured a glass of mineral water. Several younger strategy managers seated nearby glanced at my place card with subtle condescension. I recognized that look instantly. It was the arrogance of inexperienced corporate climbers, assuming an operational veteran belonged in the background. Then a shadow fell across the tablecloth. A sharp voice spoke from behind my shoulder. "Excuse me, Grant, but you are sitting in the wrong seat. You will need to vacate this table immediately." The voice belonged to Preston Croft, Senior Vice President of Global Strategy at Vanguard Global Logistics. Preston stood behind my chair with unearned confidence. He was 38 years old, wore an overly tailored designer suit, and carried himself as though he owned the enterprise. He glanced at my place card with disdain, then fixed his eyes on me with a thin smile. "This seat," Preston announced, elevating his voice for nearby investor tables, "has been assigned to Chloe for the remainder of the evening." A heavy silence settled over the area. Standing behind Preston was a young woman in her early 20s clutching a tablet. Her gold badge read Chloe Bennett, Strategy Intern. She had been hired 6 weeks earlier after her uncle joined Vanguard's board of directors. She offered an uncertain, embarrassed smile. I did not move an inch. Instead, I calmly picked up the place card and pointed to the lettering. "My name is clearly printed on this card, Preston," I replied firmly. Preston barely glanced at the card. "Yes," he replied with a dismissive wave, "but that seating arrangement was updated an hour ago by strategy leadership." He gestured toward Chloe. "She will be managing the European client engagement narrative moving forward as part of our strategic modernization initiative." A quiet murmur rippled across surrounding tables. Preston continued in his rehearsed tone. "Vanguard is transitioning away from single-point relationship dependencies. High-value clients should rely on scalable enterprise systems and automated workflow platforms, not individual personalities." He snapped his fingers toward a junior analyst standing near the wall. "Daniel, hand me the strategy portfolio." A blue folder was placed into Preston's hands. Printed across the cover was the title, "Scalable Client Relationship Model." Inside was an organizational chart where my name had been erased and replaced with an automated software workflow box. Preston snapped the folder shut. "Nothing personal, Grant," he said flatly. Then he turned to the waiter. "Please assist Mr. Vance in relocating to the staff overflow table near the kitchen corridor." The waiter hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Preston placed his palm firmly on the wooden back of my leather chair and pulled it 3 inches away from the table. "Go ahead and take your seat, Chloe," he instructed. Chloe stepped forward nervously and sat down. Discreet smartphones were raised around neighboring tables. Someone behind me whispered that a senior partner was being publicly ousted from his own table. I stood up calmly, straightened my tie, and smoothed my jacket. Preston adjusted his gold cufflinks with a smug smile. "Thank you for being flexible, Grant," he added patronizingly. I looked Preston directly in the eye, maintaining absolute composure, and spoke in a clear voice that carried across the entire VIP section. "Then you can forget about that $4.8 billion waiting in Europe." Preston froze for a second, his smug expression wavering. Without waiting for a response, I walked to the cloakroom, retrieved my coat, and walked out into the cool Manhattan air. 45 minutes after I walked out of the Regency Hotel ballroom into the night air, the heavy oak doors swung open as the German industrial delegation finally arrived. The atmosphere inside the gala had never fully recovered from my departure. Conversations had resumed among the tables, but executive glances kept drifting back toward the head table in the center of the room. Preston Croft appeared entirely unbothered by what had transpired. He had taken the armchair beside 24-year-old Chloe Bennett, eagerly presenting his digital tablet workflow diagrams to 2 unimpressed European equity partners. From a distance, Preston believed he had executed a masterclass in corporate authority, proving that senior relationship executives could be replaced instantly with corporate slide decks and digital matrices. Then the room grew noticeably quiet as the main German manufacturing delegation walked through the entrance. Several European executives stood up immediately out of professional respect. At the center of the group walked a tall, silver-haired man in a tailored charcoal suit. Otto Richter, chairman of Richter Industrial Group. His manufacturing network supplied essential heavy machinery components across Western Europe, and his pending $4.8 billion logistics expansion contract represented the single largest commercial prize of the evening. Every executive at Vanguard Global Logistics knew that the firm's stock valuation and future international growth depended heavily on securing Otto's signature. Otto walked directly toward the VIP dining section, his sharp blue eyes scanning the place cards at each setting. When he reached the head table, he stopped dead in his tracks. The leather armchair where I had sat for 7 consecutive annual galas was occupied by Chloe Bennett. She shifted nervously under his piercing gaze, adjusting her tablet. Otto looked down at her, then turned his gaze slowly toward Preston Croft. A heavy, suffocating silence descended over the entire VIP section. "Where is Grant Vance?" Otto asked. His voice was low, icy, and completely devoid of warmth. Preston stood up immediately, flashing his standard corporate smile and adjusting his suit buttons. "Mr. Richter, welcome," Preston said smoothly, extending a hand. "I am Preston Croft, Senior Vice President of Global Strategy." Otto did not extend his hand or acknowledge the formal introduction. "I asked a clear question," Otto repeated, staring straight into Preston's eyes with unyielding intensity. "Where is Grant Vance?" Preston hesitated for a second, his polished corporate demeanor faltering slightly, then gestured toward Chloe. "We have restructured our relationship management architecture," Preston explained nervously. "Our strategy team is modernizing client engagement protocols. Chloe is taking over day-to-day coordination for European accounts." Chloe gave a quick, awkward nod. "It is a true pleasure to meet you, sir," she stammered nervously, trying to maintain composure under his stare. Otto stared at her for 5 agonizing seconds before turning his gaze back to Preston. "You replaced him," Otto said flatly. It was not a question, it was a cold, brutal statement of fact. Preston gave a small, dismissive shrug. "We updated our operational model to eliminate key person dependency risk," Preston said, tapping his leather strategy folder. "Our enterprise systems and automated workflow platforms now manage the client relationship directly." Otto stood completely motionless, his expression hardening like granite. For 18 years, Otto said, his voice cutting clearly through the silent ballroom, I have built this transatlantic expansion with your firm. 18 years of technical plant visits, quarterly operational reviews, and personal handshakes, and every single conversation involved Grant Vance. Preston attempted to interject with a rehearsed speech about digital integration, but Otto raised one hand slightly, shutting him down instantly. In Germany, Otto continued calmly and firmly, business is not built on slide decks, digital diagrams, or corporate software models. Business is built between men of honor. Trust is not transferable. With those final words, Otto buttoned his charcoal jacket, turned on his heel, and walked out of the ballroom. The $4.8 billion expansion deal walked out the door right behind him. I was driving south along the Hudson River when my phone rang on the passenger seat. The illuminated screen displayed Otto Richter's name. I pulled over to the waterfront shoulder before answering the call. "Good evening, Otto," I said quietly. "Grant," Otto replied, "I have left the dinner. I will not negotiate with Vanguard Global Logistics under any circumstances. The expansion deal with Vanguard is officially dead." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle, then added, "When you decide your next professional move, call me first." Minutes after Otto hung up, another call arrived from Henrik Weber, Chief Executive Officer of Weber Supply Chain Solutions, Vanguard's primary international competitor. "Grant," Henrik said immediately, "news travels fast across the European network. I heard what Preston Croft did at the gala tonight. I have tried to recruit you for 5 years. Tonight made the decision obvious for both of us." "What are you offering, Henrik?" I asked calmly. "President of European Operations, full authority over our international network," Henrik answered without hesitation. "We will provide complete executive backing, full resource allocation, and absolute operational autonomy to expand our European logistics footprint across Germany, France, and Northern Europe. And Grant, we both know that if Otto Richter walks away from Vanguard, he brings his portfolio directly to you." I smiled into the quiet night. Preston believed that relationships were mere data entries in a corporate database, but in serious international business, real trust does not vanish. It moves. 4 days after that dramatic night in Manhattan, I sat in a floor-to-ceiling glass conference room overlooking the financial skyline of Frankfurt, Germany. Across the solid oak conference table sat Henrik Weber, Chief Executive Officer of Weber Supply Chain Solutions. Beside him lay a formal executive employment agreement appointing me President of European Operations. The contract terms were exceptional, offering complete strategic authority, full operational autonomy, and an unrestricted mandate to expand our international transit networks across Central Europe. I signed the final page just as the heavy double doors swung open. Otto Richter walked into the room carrying a thin leather document briefcase. He greeted me with a warm, respectful handshake that carried nearly 2 decades of shared professional history. "Grant," he said warmly. "Otto," I replied with equal respect, without wasting time on superficial corporate pleasantries or glossy presentations. Otto placed a thick blue file on the conference table. "Richter Industrial Group is officially transferring its $4.8 billion European logistics contract to Weber Supply Chain Solutions," Otto announced calmly. In Germany, true trust moves much faster than corporate paperwork. He executed the binding commercial agreement on the spot, transferring the massive transatlantic portfolio directly to my new division. Predictably, Preston Croft was not willing to accept his defeat gracefully. Back in Manhattan, Vanguard Global Logistics dispatched an aggressive team of senior corporate litigation attorneys, issuing emergency cease-and-desist demands against me. They falsely alleged that I had breached my non-compete covenants, misappropriated confidential corporate trade secrets, and engaged in unlawful corporate sabotage by luring away their primary anchor client. Preston personally drafted an internal corporate memo threatening to destroy me financially through relentless federal lawsuits unless I surrendered the European portfolio immediately. What Preston failed to realize was that I had spent 18 years protecting my professional autonomy against corporate overreach. I had never been a passive employee. I was a strategic architect who built my own asset base. When Preston launched his legal strike, I unveiled a comprehensive retaliatory trap that had been carefully integrated into my contractual framework years before. 5 years earlier, I had independently developed, authored, and registered the proprietary transatlantic logistics framework under United States copyright law, specifically Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106. Furthermore, the specialized route optimization algorithms integrated into the supply software were protected under my personal patents pursuant to Title 35 of the United States Code. Section 271. Vanguard Global Logistics had only ever held a conditional, non-exclusive operational license tied directly to my personal employment contract. The moment Preston unilaterally altered my executive status and attempted to hand my proprietary framework to intern Chloe Bennett, Vanguard committed willful copyright and patent infringement. Even more damaging for Preston, a detailed forensic audit of Vanguard's internal server logs revealed that to execute the sudden client reassignment, Preston had forged my digital authorization signature on internal compliance documentation. Under established corporate governance statutes and California Penal Code Section 470 regarding forgery, any corporate contract or internal reassignment executed through forged documentation is rendered void ab initio, meaning legally invalid from its very inception. My legal counsel immediately filed a federal countersuit in Manhattan District Court against Vanguard Global Logistics and against Preston Croft individually. The lawsuit detailed intentional interference with contractual relations, breach of fiduciary duty, dissipation of corporate assets, forgery, and intellectual property infringement. When Vanguard's board of directors received the federal court summons detailing Preston's forged compliance records, unauthorized client reassignments, and blatant IP theft, complete panic erupted inside their Manhattan executive suites. The board realized that Preston had not only lost their largest client, but had exposed the firm to catastrophic statutory liabilities and treble damages in federal court. Furthermore, my attorneys pointed out that Preston's reckless actions constituted a direct breach of fiduciary duty and an unauthorized dissipation of corporate assets under state corporate laws. By unilaterally driving away an 18-year anchor relationship worth $4.8 billion, without board consultation or risk analysis, Preston had breached his basic duty of care to shareholders. The board members were personally horrified to discover that Preston had misled them regarding the stability of the European accounts, assuring them that digital software frameworks could replace personal relationships without any commercial revenue fallout. To reinforce our legal posture, we also invoked federal statutory protections regarding corporate transparency and executive accountability. Our legal filings demonstrated that Preston's attempt to restructure European client management without board authorization violated internal corporate bylaws and constituted bad faith asset dissipation. With every legal filing, Vanguard's defense collapsed further, placing the entire financial burden directly onto Preston Croft's shoulders. The legal trap was complete, airtight, and completely inescapable beyond the immediate statutory claims. My legal team prepared additional evidentiary filings proving that Vanguard's executive committee had systematically ignored operational warnings. As part of our comprehensive legal strategy, we made it clear that if Vanguard pursued frivolous litigation, we would seek full statutory fee shifting, personal sanctions against Preston Croft, and a permanent injunction barring Vanguard from utilizing any portion of my patented route algorithms across their global network. This decisive legal positioning rendered Preston's threats completely powerless, forcing Vanguard's board into a desperate defensive retreat. As the legal proceedings intensified, several senior partners on Vanguard's board reached out, off the record, attempting to negotiate a quiet settlement. I instructed my counsel to maintain a firm, unyielding stance, rejecting any proposal that failed to acknowledge full corporate accountability. Our clear message was that corporate misconduct would be met with absolute legal enforceability, setting an undeniable precedent across the entire industry. The ripple effect across the European industrial sector unfolded with devastating efficiency over the next 4 weeks. Germany's manufacturing network operates as a tightly interconnected ecosystem where executive reputations are constantly evaluated by industry peers. Corporate procurement directors meet at quarterly summits, plant managers exchange operational intelligence, and news of corporate betrayal or leadership incompetence spreads within hours. When Otto Richter transferred his $4.8 billion expansion contract to Weber Supply Chain Solutions, the entire European manufacturing community took notice. If an industry giant like Otto severed an 18-year relationship due to executive misconduct, no major firm wanted to remain exposed to Vanguard's reckless management. The first formal contract termination notice hit Vanguard's Manhattan office on a Tuesday morning. A major Bavarian precision engineering firm canceled its $45 million annual freight agreement, explicitly citing the loss of trusted operational leadership. 2 days later, a Stuttgart automotive component manufacturer terminated its $80 million logistics contract. Termination letters followed in rapid succession, like falling dominoes across Western Europe. Within 4 weeks, over $600 million in secondary European logistics agreements had migrated directly to my division at Weber Supply Chain Solutions. Meanwhile, Vanguard's public stock price plummeted by 32% as institutional investors panicked over the total collapse of their European expansion pipeline. Vanguard's board of directors convened an emergency executive session to investigate the unprecedented operational disaster. They retained an independent forensic accounting firm and senior white-collar defense attorneys to audit every email, internal memo, and client reassignment authorized by Preston Croft. What the audit revealed destroyed Preston's corporate career entirely and exposed systemic executive corruption within his division. The investigation proved that Preston had deliberately bypassed board approval, falsified client satisfaction metrics, forged executive signatures on compliance documents, and violated federal employment statutes, specifically the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101, by attempting to dismantle European field units without statutory notice. Preston had single-handedly exposed Vanguard to massive legal liability while destroying $4.8 billion in core revenue simply to elevate his personal favorite intern and justify his flawed strategy metrics. Furthermore, forensic accountants uncovered that Preston had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in corporate funds hosting lavish private strategy dinners to promote his internal restructuring plan to board members, while obscuring the growing dissatisfaction of European client partners. The audit report concluded that Preston's gross negligence, unauthorized actions, and intentional deception directly caused the loss of Vanguard's European commercial presence. The audit also revealed that Preston had attempted to alter internal risk assessment reports to conceal the immediate financial impact of Otto Richter's exit from the board of directors. When confronted by forensic auditors, Preston attempted to shift blame onto junior staff members, claiming that his analysts had provided inaccurate relationship data. This cowardly attempt to avoid accountability alienated even his remaining corporate allies on the board, ensuring that no member of executive leadership would stand up to defend him. To make matters worse for Vanguard, European trade union representatives and industry labor councils filed formal administrative complaints citing statutory non-compliance. Under European labor laws and parallel provisions of the Warren Act, under Title 29 of the United States Code, Section 2101, Preston's abrupt closing of field offices without statutory 60-day notice triggered steep financial penalties and retroactive wage liabilities. These additional regulatory fines compounded Vanguard's financial losses, bringing their total European restructuring deficit to hundreds of millions of dollars beyond the lost contract revenue. As news of the forensic audit leaked to Wall Street analysts, Vanguard's primary institutional shareholders threatened a proxy battle to replace the remaining executive committee unless immediate legal action was taken to recover corporate assets. The board realized that Preston Croft's arrogance had crippled the firm's global reputation. In a desperate bid to mitigate shareholder lawsuits, Vanguard's legal team began preparing a formal civil complaint against Preston Croft for breach of fiduciary duty, corporate waste, and gross negligence, seeking full recovery of the financial damages resulting from his unauthorized actions. 8 weeks after the ill-fated Manhattan Gala, Vanguard's board of directors issued a brief press release. Preston Croft had been terminated for cause, effective immediately, stripped of his unvested stock options, denied executive severance, and facing personal civil liability from shareholder lawsuits for breach of fiduciary duty and corporate waste. Preston was escorted out of the corporate building by armed security guards. His executive career was permanently ruined, crushed under the weight of his own arrogance. Meanwhile, at Weber Supply Chain Solutions, our European operations flourished beyond all initial expectations. With Otto Richter's anchor contract secured and secondary industrial partners flocking to our network, we expanded our logistical reach across Germany, Austria, France, and Northern Europe. Our quarterly revenue figures surged, reflecting the natural migration of capital toward operational integrity, technical reliability, and proven executive leadership. The corporate ladder climbers in Manhattan learned a costly lesson about the real world of international commerce. 4 months after that fateful night in Manhattan, autumn leaves were turning bright gold across the rolling hills of Stuttgart. Weber Supply Chain Solutions had established its European operational headquarters in a modern glass facility overlooking the Neckar Valley. My executive office was quiet, efficient, and staffed by experienced logistics professionals who understood that international commerce relies on personal integrity, technical precision, and mutual respect rather than slick corporate pitch decks or artificial metrics. That evening, I walked to a quiet historic restaurant tucked away in the old quarter of Stuttgart. Inside a private dining room illuminated by warm candlelight and lined with dark wood paneling, Otto Richter was already waiting. On the table sat a bottle of aged Spätburgunder red wine beside 2 crystal glasses. Otto stood up as I entered the room, greeting me with a broad, genuine smile and a firm handshake that reflected years of mutual trust. "President Vance," he said warmly, gesturing to the table. "Chairman Richter." I replied with deep respect as I took my seat. We spent the evening reviewing long-term expansion plans. New freight corridors connecting German manufacturing hubs to international shipping ports, and sustainable supply chain initiatives across Central Europe. There were no corporate cameras, no public relations handlers, and no junior analysts waving glossy presentation decks. It was simply 2 experienced men discussing serious business grounded in mutual trust and proven execution. When we finalized the expanded multi-year operational agreement, Otto poured 2 glasses of aged red wine. He raised his glass in a quiet, thoughtful toast. To continuity, personal trust, and knowing the true value of the person standing across the table, he said with conviction. We clinked glasses in the quiet room. Walking through the cool evening streets of Stuttgart later that night, I looked up at the stars reflecting above the ancient city skyline. I reflected back to that chaotic ballroom in Manhattan 4 months ago. Preston Croft believed that pulling my chair away was a simple demonstration of corporate authority. He believed an 18-year partnership could be reduced to a slide deck managed by a 24-year-old intern. He thought he was merely taking a seat at a VIP dining table. In reality, he pulled out the single foundational pillar holding $4.8 billion together. In the end, corporate systems can manage data, but only human honor can build an empire. Looking back on the entire ordeal, the lesson was clear for every corporate ladder climber who believes that relationships can be automated away. Real leadership is forged in the trenches of hard work, accountability, and legal foresight. When an arrogant executive tries to strip away what you built, you do not need to shout or create a scene. You simply step aside, let their arrogance destroy their own foundation, and allow the laws of honor and legal justice to finish the job. As I arrived at my office overlooking the city, I knew that the future of our enterprise was secure. We had built a resilient, ethical, and highly profitable logistics ecosystem that would endure for generations. The $4.8 billion deal was not just a commercial victory. It was a testament to the enduring power of character over corporate hubris. Standing by the window in the quiet night air, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. True success is not measured by temporary corporate titles or aggressive displays of authority at a dining table. True success is measured by the enduring relationships you build, the respect you earn from peers of high character, and the unwavering integrity with which you conduct your life. In the quiet resolution of justice, honor always triumphs. The European division of Weber Supply Chain Solutions went on to set historic growth records over the following fiscal quarters. Our operational framework became the gold standard for transatlantic logistics, proving to the global business community that enterprise scale and human integrity are not mutually exclusive. As for Vanguard Global Logistics, their market share in Europe never recovered, serving as a permanent warning to corporate boards about the catastrophic cost of unearned arrogance. In the months that followed, several other senior relationship managers from across the logistics industry reached out to consult on our operational philosophy. We established an executive mentorship program designed to train the next generation of logistics leaders in the timeless values of personal trust, technical rigor, and legal protection. As I looked out over the thriving Frankfurt and Stuttgart operations, I knew that our legacy was firmly established, standing as an unyielding fortress of character in an ever-changing corporate landscape. Ultimately, the journey proved that true authority cannot be seized by pulling a chair at a banquet table. Authority is earned day by day through honorable choices, technical excellence, and absolute loyalty to those who place their trust in you. When you align your professional career with those eternal principles, no corporate scheme or ambitious executive can ever tear down what you have constructed. Standing before the wide glass bay window overlooking the illuminated river below, I raised my coffee cup in a quiet salute to the long road behind me. The storms of corporate deception had passed, leaving behind a clear horizon where work of lasting value could be done every day with pride and dignity. Our team continued to pioneer innovative logistics solutions, setting new benchmarks for environmental sustainability, technical efficiency, and strategic compliance. Across every operational center in Europe, the message was clear: success is built on unwavering commitment, legal precision, and deep personal trust. That night in Manhattan had started with an insult, but it ended by forging a legacy that time could never erode.